Hi, welcome to Personality Hacker. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Today we are going to talk about the personality type ENFJ in the Myers Briggs system, or harmony perspectives in the genius system.
Yeah, so this type is actually not as well represented as you would think in the population. Statistically, they're less than 4% of the population, and that's sad because there's some really great things about ENFJs, or harmony perspectives users. We see them in some really interesting positions of leadership. In fact, whenever I think of this type, the ENFJ type, I always think of the consummate cult leader.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best way possible. The
You know
cult
who I always
leader,
think of, right?
Who?
Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, always. Right?
That's like, boom, instantly. And she's kind of what you're talking about. She's that cult leader personality.
Yeah, so the phrase cult leader probably sounds like it has negative connotations, but like Oprah has a cult. She has just legions of soccer moms that when she says jump, they say how high while they're already in the air.
Yeah.
And that's the power and the magnetism of this type when it's developed, when it's done well. There's just this charismatic persuasiveness to the type that I think is just, it's really great. And I think it's because they marry a feeling process, harmony, we call it in the genius system. They marry this ability to understand what's going on for other people, what's important socially, how to connect, not just connect two people together, but sort of connect an entire social group together. They're really amazing at understanding, you know, sort of dynamics between people and how we're all impacting each other. And they marry that with the ability to get out of their own perspective and get into the perspective of other people. And so that means that I've seen them in such incredible roles as like counselors and therapists of relationships, because they don't just see like the one person and then the other person and then how they're relating. They see the relationship as almost yet another perspective, because they're really in tune and in touch with dynamics. And so because of that, they make the most exceptional relationship therapists and coaches and counselors of anybody. But that extends outward beyond just like the two people in a relationship.
Yeah.
It extends outward to understanding how families work in general, how cultures work in mass. Like if you start zooming out, the ENFJ really understands how all of us interplay together on a really sophisticated level. And I think that's why they make such good cult leaders, because they know what is going to have an impact and it be meaningful to an entire group of people.
Yeah, they're very inspiring. You ever seen an ENFJ like on a stage presenting or inspiring a group of people? They can really get people motivated to do something for good or for whatever they actually want to do, whether it's good or evil. But oftentimes these are good people that show up and they want to inspire people to do better things with their lives or be better versions of themselves or whatever. And it's inspiring to watch an ENFJ that is this kind of cult leader personality. Now, not everyone's going to be like that.
No.
You're an ENFJ. You're not maybe that cult leader person. Maybe you're not going to be on stage leading, but there's other ways you're leading, maybe your family or your social group or your church or whatever you're involved in your community or family.
Yeah. Well, and the leverage point for this type is to make sure that they're getting their own individual needs met.
Yeah.
Harmony, people who use harmony, but especially those who have it as what we call the driver position, or they lead with this process, they have a tendency to get everybody else's needs met and forget to get their own needs met. And so if you really have ambitions to be something, you know, sort of bigger, like really play a big game or bring your best self forward in any context that you want to, the key to the whole operation is making sure that you're getting your needs met as well, because otherwise you tap out and you're not able to give to a bigger context, right? To a bigger group of people. So it's really important for ENFJs to have their finger on the pulse of their own personal needs. And of course, the highest leverage thing to do for any type, but you know, we're talking about ENFJs right now. The highest leverage thing to do is to develop your perspectives process, which is your co-pilot in the genius system. That's your intuitive process. That's the part of you that goes inside and really understands how your mind is working and how other people's mind is working. And that's what helps get maybe some space from other people's sort of emotional energy. If you go into that place, even in like a meditative state, right? Like you get some alone time, you get to sort of wander the garden of your mind. You're going to come up with your best ideas. You're going to see the biggest perspective. You're going to really see how to make an impact on the largest group of people.
And one of the things that could trip you up as an ENFJ, if this is your personality type, is not going to that co-pilot to grow, and instead going to the process that sits right behind that, which is sensation. And it's a great place to be if you're maybe building intimacy or you're in a playful state. But if you go there in a defensive state, it can be really bad because it could trip you up as an ENFJ. So it's really important to think about how you're interacting with that, what we call a tertiary process, if you're looking at the car model, and really work on going into your Copilot to grow that perspectives process.
Yeah, well, if you want more information on what that looks like on a granular level, we have the Genius Style Assessment on the Personality Hacker website. You go to a button that says Take This Test, and if you test out as an ENFJ, if you have taken the assessment and you've tested out as an ENFJ, and you really want to understand how that 10-year-old sensation process can trip you up, and maybe some tools and tips and tricks to get into your perspectives process to become the best version of yourself, we have a premium assessment that we highly recommend that you go for and maybe get a bigger, sort of a bigger, more zoomed out and also a more zoomed in perspective of how your type works and how to bring your best self forward.
Yeah, we'd love to have you do that. So you can find that at personalityhacker.com.
What is a secret about ENFJs? Something maybe other people don't know about them that is really high leverage for an ENFJ to know about themselves? They probably know this about themselves, but what do other people not know?
I would say that they're so socially focused and they're very in tune with everyone's feelings. And so I think that they sometimes don't present themselves in a way that, how do I say this? I want to make sure I'm very clear on how I say this. They present themselves in a way, they don't give themselves enough credit for how much they can show up and the intelligence they can bring to the table.
Yeah.
Because they're sometimes looking at getting everybody's needs met and focused on the feelings in the room.
Yeah.
That often they neglect their own intelligence that they could bring to the discussion of the table.
Yeah, I think they defer a lot.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think they want to keep that rapport and that connection with another person. So sometimes they'll kind of throw themselves under a bus and not really show up as powerfully as they could. In fact, I remember somebody asking, for example, Oprah. I remember somebody asking her, what's something about Oprah Winfrey that most people wouldn't know? And she said, underneath all of it, I'm a teacher at heart. And I think a lot of ENFJs forget to bring that aspect of themselves forward. They neglect how much they have to give in, not just in like getting your needs met way, but also in bringing really interesting perspectives to the world, like really helping other people understand something and really being teachers, not just sort of maybe, the silent counselor. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's something that is, I think it's something that a lot of ENFJs could really kind of step into, is that teaching role and bring more of that component of who they are to the forefront. So thank you very much for joining us on a riff of the ENFJ personality type.